Today on Co-op for Two, a quick spoiler-free review of a brand new game, Backstories Alone Under the Ice. What's different about this little adventure game? Let's find out. What exactly is Backstories Alone Under the Ice? It's the first and only game in this series, but it looks like maybe we'll see more if it catches on. It is a small card-based adventure game with some mystery elements, meaning there are occasional deductive pieces to figuring out what to do. And you are trying to sort of solve a mystery, but most of what you'll be doing is interacting with objects, making choices, trying to get the best ending. It was released in November 2024 in English at least. And I purchased this for about $15. I think that's what it's selling for. I purchased this game myself, as with all the games on this channel. I have no relationship with the publisher. It is rated on the box at 2 out of 5 difficulty for all audiences. I think that's about right. It's on the easy side of the kinds of games that I play. It's a totally analog experience, no internet required, and very minimal replayability. It's possible you'll play through it and lose or get a bad ending and want to redo it, replay a little bit of it to try to solve it, but very minimal different paths through it. However, nothing gets destroyed, so you will be able to pass it along or sell it. Okay, so I said this is going to be a spoiler-free review, and it will be, but I do need to open up the box, show you the first couple cards you'll see, and walk through the instructions so you can see what's different here. There is a clever little hook, a little gimmick that works very well, and you have to see it to really appreciate it. So here are the rules, and you see what the hook is, what the gimmick, which is that there are certain cards that are like windows. Windows on the side or in the front, and they represent actions or objects that you can combine with other cards by overlaying them and flipping them over. And I'll show you that. We'll look at the first two cards. And then you get a brief review of the iconography. Occasionally you'll be told to draw a card, discard a card, or flip over a card. And then there are some clever little status cards that you'll be told to draw occasionally that you're not really told how that's going to affect the game, but it's interesting and they can get worse. So you get cold, and then your cold turns into freezing, etc. And then there's also this panorama setup. We've seen this in a couple other games where cards combine to form a location. There'll be cards of people you can talk to or locations and so on. So let's take a look at the first couple cards. So here's an objective card. Gives you instructions, starts off the story. I'm just going to be showing you the cards you would see when you start the game and nothing else. So it tells you to draw cards 2 to 10, then flip it over. And then this is just to cover up cards. Okay, so you're told to draw cards 2 through 10 here in the beginning. So let's just take a look at them so you can get a feel for the kinds of different cards there are and how they work. So we've got a bunch of cards that are used to interact with others. You can see their actions. You can see how they work. They hide different areas of the card. And then occasionally you get a card like this, which has a similar effect, but numbers are revealed here. So there's always going to be one objective card out. Here's your first objective card. Gives you an assignment, what you're trying to do, and then as the game proceeds, this will flip over to the next one or tell you to draw a replacement. This is your character, and then you've got these panorama cards, and you can see this is your first set you'll be told to bring out, and you line them up according to the diagram at the top here. Sorry, let me bring this in so you can see it. And then during the course of play, you might bring out more to fill out this entire panorama, or you'll travel to a new place and get a whole new set of cards. And throughout the course of the game, you'll be traveling to different places. You spend a little bit of time here exploring, then you'll move along. There's no time limit per se. Most of the time, you just explore until you want to move on, till you make a choice. However, this is really an adventure game, and things can happen to you. That's where the status cards come in. And bad things can happen sometimes when you interact with cards. If you approach someone in the wrong way, sometimes you'll be asked to make choices, or if you interact to objects, bad things can happen. And just to show you how this works, I'm not going to reveal what happens, but if you wanted to talk to this person, you would take this card, you'd put it on the back, and then you'd flip over and read what's in there. So that's if you want to chat with this person. You could chat with this person or chat with this person, or you could ask them about something. Same thing, you want to ask them about something, you flip it over. Sometimes when you do that, it'll tell you to go get another card or get a condition. Some of the conditions are bad, so you have to think twice about doing it. This is not a game like some of the mystery card games we've seen where very rarely you can combine objects. This is all about combining objects and doing things and doing these actions, and they don't always lead to good things. So you have to think twice about, do I really want to do that? Will that get me a bad condition or a good condition? And that's how the game works. You'll proceed through many locations. Occasionally, you'll get decisions that feel arbitrary. Occasionally, you'll get decisions that require you to solve a little bit of a puzzle. It took us about 3 hours to play through this box. That amounts to about an hour playing through on your own. This would work solo. There's no special rules for multiplayer gaming. Okay, let's talk some of the positives here. This is a light adventure game, sort of in the same genre as Cartaventura or Washed Ashore. It is an enjoyable mechanical process. The art of these locations is quite enjoyable, well done. The rest of the art is a little bit passable, but this art tends to be good, and some of it is quite evocative. It's fun to explore, go to new locations. Some of the decisions feel arbitrary, but they're still tense because you know there are consequences. These condition cards that come up are very clever because they get progressively worse. Each condition, there's a handful of them. As you make a mistake or do something that has a cost in terms of a condition, you can feel the tension rising. You don't know exactly what the consequence of it is going to be. It doesn't affect your score. It doesn't say now you get -5 points, but now you've lost an object or you're freezing or whatever, and you're like, how is this going to affect my adventure as I go on? There are a couple of puzzly elements to this where if you're not thinking carefully, you're going to make a wrong decision, but none of it feels too weighty. And there is an attempt to throw some different twists and mechanics. This really gives you a variety of experiences in this box here. And a good attempt to create tension with whether it's the conditions or a couple other twists. I think they do a pretty good job here. And I think the highlight here, of course, you can guess, is this object interaction where you're taking actions on certain people. It's not, I guess object interaction isn't quite the right name. There are cards like this later on that represent objects and combining objects, but sometimes it's just what actions to perform on what objects and people. But there's a lot of different combinations. It does feel like a little bit of a point-and-click adventure in a totally analog form. It is fun, and the story is very linear, and it's a fairly small-scale story. But actually, the interactions with objects between each other and what actions to perform are such that you won't do them all. And there are multiple ways to solve certain problems, multiple ways to use objects. That's kind of fun. I'm not sure you could really play through this multiple times. I don't think it's that kind of thing. There aren't completely different branches here. You're going to have the same experience. So I think really this is a one-time playthrough. Nothing really gets damaged. You could pass it along. Although there are slightly different, there's a bad, a medium, and a best ending, basically. And so you could play it again and try to get a better ending, although I don't think the game is really designed for that. It's basically a one-time or a playthrough and then try something again if it doesn't quite work. And then there's lots of little different things here, but then there's an issue of trying to spot in these pictures, clues, which occasionally come up, not frequently, but enough to keep you on your toes. As far as negatives, really the only thing I might complain about is that some of the decisions, especially the early decisions, feel a little bit arbitrary, like there might not be any good way to predict what you should do, but I think you have to embrace that with these kinds of adventure games. You're sort of out to have fun. Don't obsess too much about a decision that's psychological or can't have a correct answer. Just go with the flow here. But you do have to be aware some of the questions are puzzly in nature and you should figure them out. And I think another possible negative is this really is a fairly linear adventure. So you are only going to play through this once and you won't see very different things. Maybe there's a little bit of a missed opportunity to have some optional objectives. There's a tiny bit of it here, but you could imagine there's a lot of cards you get for this little cheap box. You can see it's a big collection of cards, but mostly those are so that you can have these fun interactions with objects in different ways. But because there's not really different paths to go through here, I think you're just going to get your one path through. You're not going to be motivated enough to play through it again to see different things. And that's a little bit of a shame. It might have been nice to have things to collect so that you could try to replay it and do the best. So final rating, this is a little difficult. I mean, for a consumable snack of a game, maybe 7.5 or 8 for the novelty of it. I'd love to see this system explored more, but I do like it. And if you can get it for cheap, I do think it could be a fun little diversion. Certainly playable solo, but I think also might be perfect to play with a younger person and an adult to help. A younger person could go through it completely on their own. I mean, a very young kid could go through it completely on their own. On the other hand, the puzzles are on the easy side, but there's an occasional one that ramps up a little. And there's a couple moments here that I think a very young child might just zoom past and get a bad ending. So this might be a good game to play as a combination. As I said, not particularly challenging, but a fun diversion, a fun little snack, especially if you can get it cheap. Okay, I'd love to hear what you thought of this game. If you played it, you can watch our playthrough on YouTube Live. And if there are more games in this series, I'd be happy to play them. I'll see you on the next video.